Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. I'm Paul Elam with A Voice for Men, and joining me today for this discussion is huMAN. That's lowercase hu, uppercase MAN. His YouTube channel, which I highly recommend, is down below. You can click on it and subscribe to this guy. Welcome, huMAN. How you doing?
Thanks, Paul. Great to chat with you. I'm doing well.
I just stumbled recently on your channel, as a matter of fact, and really got pretty excited about it. I like the angle that you take the information that we talk about red pill philosophy and red pill life, and I like the way that you've approached it. In particular, what caught my attention the first time I delved into your channel was a discussion you did on Maslow's hierarchy, also known as Maslow's ladder. So I want to start with a few questions. First of all, what got you interested in Maslow's ladder as it relates to this manospherian red pill philosophy world that we find ourselves talking about?
Well, firstly, I want to say I'm no expert. I have a pedestrian understanding of it, like most people who've come across it. Just basically about the needs from the base needs to sort of the higher and more enlightened or self-actualized needs. And I just had a perspective about it in that video, which is funny. You call it Maslow's ladder or hierarchy. I termed the video Maslow's anchor. And I just had a concept of how a lot of men don't move past the base primal needs, and they keep themselves stuck in the mud or submerged, and they covet a lot of fear and survival right there, and never really, get above water and get any air, let alone take any steps further to self-actualization or sort of knowing who they are.
That's a good point. For the benefit of everyone, I'm putting this pyramid. We can also call it Maslow's pyramid, Maslow's anchor, ladder, hierarchy, whatever you want to call it. We're going to put it up on the screen here for people to see. And you'll see when he is talking about basic needs, this is what Maslow called deficiency needs. You need food, shelter, water, safety, those sort of basic things before you can move on to other needs. And the whole contention of Maslow's work was that unless you had basic safety, basic comfort and safety in line, that you couldn't move on to the next rungs. You can't self-actualize if you're hungry, that sort of thing. And I've thought about this always in terms of, first, of blue pill men and just what happens in the average guy's life. And as you can see there on this pyramid diagram that we have the physiological stuff at the very bottom then, and then moving up to the psychological needs, we're talking about love and acceptance. And this is where it gets really messy for men, because we live in kind of a world of illusion, I think, where it regards women, about being loved by women, having their acceptance. What are we there for? A lot of men's experiences, they turn out to be kind of utilities in the lives of women. And when they outlive their usefulness, then they have outlived their usefulness to the woman. And so there is this constant sort of hamster wheel that men run on, trying to get women's acceptance and love, and quite often failing. And so, first of all, just in normal blue pill life, I see a lot of men beating their heads up against the wall to get anywhere like a satisfying life with those psychological needs that Maslow described. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, just literally now as you were describing it, and I was looking at the pyramid, take a look at where love is on the pyramid. It's a convenient barrier for any man to sort of ascend beyond if women hold the discourse of what love is and what a relationship is. So if right at the middle there, or just above the base of primal sort of primal needs, survival needs, you basically have a barrier of romantic female love, which I really struggled with and detested before I kind of just let it go in my late 30s, I think it was. Because the female, like romantic female love to me is just a combination of lust and pity. And guys get stuck in that. Whereas when you really let go of it and start to sort of see that love for a guy, without wanting to sort of denigrate women or anybody, for a man, the perception of love that resonated with me is the same kind of love you see towards anything else other than women. But then when the script that is told to you is when you're with a female, all of a sudden the world is upside down and the rules of love change. Only with her, but with your friends, your family, your dog, everything else, the constant rules and the interplay of love tends to be fairly similar. And it was only when I realized that the gynocentric or female romantic love was really counterproductive and at best and a complete sham at worst. Because to me, I see when men finally let go of that sort of barrier of female gynocentric romantic love, then they can actually stand by what it is to kind of show affection and love as a man. I actually see love as a man not as a feeling, but as a conviction, as a discipline. That's the way men actually feel good about love. And it's an honorable thing, whereas they've been sold by women that love is the way it exists for them. It's not being able to breathe, being confused, not knowing what's going to happen tomorrow, this insecurity, this giddy fear, this tickling trepidation. It's a load of bullshit. And it's no wonder that men get confused by it, because they think that this is the script. And they can't get an explanation from women growing up what it is, because it's kind of dismissive, and they roll their eyes at men saying, oh, well, you men don't understand, yet they can't explain it themselves. So we defer to women's so-called expertise in love, because that's what we're told. And given this Maslow's hierarchy, if you actually look at the strategic place love actually has, you can't actually get to the next level of esteem. You can't actually get to the next level of real respect, strength, status. Superficially you can, but freedom, and then let alone self-actualization beyond that. So it's really a disavowing and really throwing away caring how women or what women think of love, and really focusing on what you think it is.
I think that's really one well said, well stated, sir. I think another part of it too, the sort of the difficulty that the average guy, the average blue pill guy out there that has in the world, is that they're trained from the time they're born to channel every idea they have of love into this fraudulent romantic notion of love. That they say, oh yeah, I love my friends. Oh, I love, playing the guitar. I love this, I love that. But when they're really talking about love, they're talking about, does that woman approve of me? Does she accept me? Does she love me back? And in many cases they find out, well, of course she does, as long as you're providing something. And that's a kind of a ridiculous notion of love. But what I really find interesting is, I think there's two kinds of men, and one of them is the more MGTOW or red pill type that will get on that hamster wheel for a while and then say, fuck this, I'm off. And they'll get off the hamster wheel and start finding other ways to fill in what's missing from removing the romantic model. Yeah. But most men, the average guy, I would say 90% plus, will get up on that hamster wheel and stay on there over and over again after one relationship failure after another. Or they'll just give up and figure that they're not lovable. And so they stay stuck right at the deficiency needs, and that's where they stay until they die. But I think it's really interesting that you brought in immediately this alternative mentality that we are totally allowed to have about what love is, what it means to us.
Yeah. I mean, that was one of many, but I remember it was a really sharp, sort of a real self-respect thing for me when I finally it clicked in me in conversations. It became almost a reflex when I felt that old, the tried and tested sort of thing that women will sort of push you into a corner and then you always submit. This was sort of in my 20s, I remember. Then slowly, just my innate curiosity and sort of intellectual, what would you call it, obstreperousness or, defiance would kind of go, hang on a minute, I exist here as well. And so when I started to sort of think, my opinion matters too, there's two people here. And in terms of self-actualization, what I've noticed through my 30s and now in my 40s with guys, especially in sort of men's circles online, whether it's MGTOW, MRA, pickup artists, whatever they are, is this sense of self. And it was always fed essentially by you being in a relationship, but really she was the only thing that existed in your head. And in her head, she's also the only thing that existed. So I had this sense of, hang on a minute, I'm here as well. And I think most guys, maybe not most guys, but a lot of guys never have that little inkling that themselves are actually there as well. And when I actually started to stand up for and give permission for the second person to actually exist and saying, hang on, fuck you, it spilt over into other things like having the self-respect in jobs to sort of not be taken advantage of. And, when the boss is always asking you to work overtime every day of the week while he goes home, it's like, well, no. You just start to get a sense of I matter, and there's a sense of balance and fairness you start to sort of imbue in your view of things and how you see the world. It was really funny as I got older with women when I'd start to sort of put fairness back onto them. Nothing to do with biology. I understand differences in sexual dimorphism between males and females. But when it's just got to do with treating each other fairly in the moment, when I started to put things back on them, the raised eyebrows as though I was transgressing against royalty, and how dare I ask for? It's almost like what, you want something out of this? Like, oh, you're such a sleazebag. Like,
you exist.
Like you want something? And so it became laughable to me, and it slowly led into not giving a shit about the sort of childish sort of mannerisms of older women who sort of have child brains. Look, the women, the few women out there that can sort of think rationally, my hat's off to you, but the vast majority out there act like children, and they're sold. The media is selling.
Off too, to all three of them.
But in terms of the two, I want to get back to sort of, before we go too far, of course, in terms of the guys that get back on the plantation that you sort of said. I've had this discussion with Stardust where we both agree that the red pill, actually, we don't think it's for everyone. Some guys, I have sympathy for guys that get put through the ringer of divorce courts and their children being taken away. I fully sympathize. But sometimes you have to ask yourself whether taking the blue pill, and if life is worse for you afterwards, and you feel awful, depressed, lost, you have no meaning, and no matter how much you try, how many decades pass, it doesn't change. Some guys aren't actually built for it. And that's not saying that you or I are better. And it's not to say that red pill information or MGTOW information can't be helpful and can't sort of give, say, a married guy who really that's his purpose in life. It can't give him a few tools and a little bit of self-esteem and self-respect where he can sort of ask for it. But I don't think that the red pill is good for everyone. I think it's more for someone like you or I who's kind of got a more of a rebellious individual nature. I'm not sure what you think of that, but.
Well, I think I agree, at least ostensibly, with what you're saying. I mean, part of me wants to scream an objection, though, because one of the things that I had to conclude was that blue pill relationships, or blue pill love, as it were, is by its nature diminishing to a man's self-respect. It seems impossible for me to have that social contract where you don't matter, where what you want doesn't play a picture in anything, where it's all about her being the center of the universe. That the only way you survive in that is with a very healthy amount of denial. You have to be able to lie to yourself. Oh yes, I'm happy, I'm well adjusted, I'm doing great. I love every moment of my life being about trying to make her happy. And I don't mind all the rounds of pulling my hair out because no matter what I do, it doesn't make her happy. I agree with you in conclusion. The red pill is not for everybody. There are men who just can't digest it. They can't get out of gynocentrism. And there's no denying that. I mean, and I think that's honestly most men. I do think it's a small, rebellious minority. Probably a lot of family scapegoatism in the histories of guys that are open to red pill living. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to share them. And I do think that even blue pill men, and this is something I brought up in my last ICMI talk, that even blue pill men can benefit from some red pill doses even if they're married, that they might somehow claim out a piece of ground within their marriage and say, no, this is fucking mine, and you're not taking this anymore. And of course, chances are good that a lot of women will leave that situation. But at least he's acted in his own interest. I guess I'm disagreeing with you by agreeing with you.
Yeah. Oh, look, you and I both want all guys, if possible, as many as possible, to be able to digest the red pill, for lack of a better word. But just by pure observation, with a scientific mind, looking at the amount of guys on the boards of men's communities, the amount of them that keep slingshotting back to the rubber band of biology and gynocentrism, it's the pull is too great. Their biology, the pull of their biology is too great. So the self, which probably reproductively and for our species doesn't really serve, it serves us as individuals probably not well, but better in terms of having a more interesting intellectual life and maybe realizing a few things if we're creative like I am. But if, like, here's another thing. What's the point of the red pill if you don't want to do anything when you're free? You know, they're all questions that some of these guys, the red pill sounds great. To me, it's the same as someone who likes the idea of getting fit or losing weight, but doesn't actually actualize it. So it's always the idea is great. There's a lot of ideas that sound great, like, you know, being rich sounds great. But when I look at someone drive past in a Lamborghini, I know what it would take to get that. And my action towards it is zero, because I don't want to be the person that has to sort of spend a lot of their lives getting it. That's not important to me. Other things are. And so taking the red pill for someone who actually doesn't want to do anything with it, I think is, it's not for those people. And again, it's not me being triumphalist or sort of better or anything. I just think it's sort of being on the side of the majority, you know?
I absolutely agree with that. As a matter of fact, one of the more common questions I get in email, and I get this one regularly, guys write me and say, you know, I just started watching your videos, or I just saw the Red Pill movie. I just started watching Karen Strawn, or, you know, one of the other MGTOW guys. And so how do I do this without pissing off my family? How do I do this without upsetting my friends? How do I do this without doing this? It doesn't even appear to, the irony of what they're asking does not appear to register with them as they're asking me, how do I live this entirely different life without living it? And there's a lot of that.
Well, yeah, I see a dividing line, and this is probably something we should mention in terms of who's more able to self-actualize as opposed to who isn't. And it's got nothing to do with who's more intelligent, who's more whatever. It's just kind of an innate, I don't know, predisposition or sort of a trait in someone's character. I mean, you might have your own views, but I think it's the person, there's the demarcation of, if you're a person that starts to become more internally validated, you can self-actualize. If you are externally validated, you can't. It's almost impossible. And that's the kind of demarcation. That's really the demarcation. And sort of, if you look at it in terms of ethics and morals, ethics being you, what are the rules to which you adhere, and morals being the public. How do you treat the public? How are you in relation to them? How, you know, the golden rule, treat others as. So one's externally validated, one's internally. And most guys, like we mentioned before, in terms of love, everything's external. You know, my ethics are given to me by her. My ethics. So basically, your morals and ethics become one to a man in most cases. Whereas I think to self-actualize, you really need a strong sense of your own ethics. And they become virtues, and then it can lead to kind of contentment, happiness, and self-actualization. But if you don't actually believe in it, I mean, you can say till you're blue in the face. You can do the Tony Robbins style of CI, you know. But if you don't believe it, nothing will happen. And the guys that listen to you and I and think we're talking a lot of airy-fairy, woo-woo kind of psychological sort of masturbation, they don't kind of get it until you have you're internally validated and you have a really strong sense of your ethical self. I don't really think you can self-actualize, especially if you worship love and belonging of the female kind, that barrier in the middle of the pyramid.
Yeah, if you take a red pill and don't replace the void with a values-centered lifestyle, you're really fucked. You're going to go in circles like your foot's caught in a hole.
Well, the analogy I kind of use is the red pill is like being stuck in a just before the red pill, when you kind of feel life is so claustrophobic that you need to take the red pill. It's like jumping out of a plane without a parachute because the pressures of life, gynocentrism, and all that were in the plane, and you had enough and you just jumped. And self-actualization after you jump is building your parachute. And most guys just keep free falling, and it's never for them. But that's the actual thing. It's like the Matrix analogy. Once you're unplugged, you can't actually go back. So once you jump out of that plane, being self-determined, developing your own ethics, self-validation is really building your own parachute. Otherwise, you're going to crash or, go back.
Except I think you pointed out quite accurately, going back really, I don't think you can untake red pills. If once you've had a glimpse of the reality, it's very, very difficult to go back into denial.
You can't go back authentically. It's like going to a shitty job and putting up with the being exploited by a shitty boss. So you can go back there and shut your mouth, even though you know what's what, but you'll keep kicking yourself because now you know the truth. That's the difficult thing.
To back up a moment, I just wanted to point out one more thing before changing gears here, is that when we look at this obstacle, this psychological love/acceptance obstacle that hits most men on their path to self-actualization, if you take a look, I mean, we talked about the need to reject romantic love, or at least the purported benefit of rejecting the romantic model, seeking love and internal affirmation, internal validation. But if you note men that circumvented that in the past, men like Tesla, Edison, others, you see a whole lot of bachelors. And, we wouldn't have called them red pill necessarily. We would just call them bachelors. But there is, I think, a highly disproportionate amount of self-actualized men that either consciously or unconsciously rejected the romantic model anyway, because they just didn't participate.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. When you look at all those greats, and examples of excellence, and they should be examples of excellence, not what we have today where it's the race to the bottom, where they had a calling. And if you don't honestly have a calling, again, the red pill could be completely counterproductive if you got nothing that's calling you. And it doesn't matter how banal you think it is. It could just be, look, I just want to fucking have time building a car. I want to be able to travel. I want to be able to sort of write, paint, create things, but in your own way, doing your own thing, and it doesn't necessarily have to involve her. The thing is with guys, we've mentioned this, you and I mentioned this briefly before, but about guys being stuck at the bottom saying no, that they don't know how to say yes to anything that they want. They say yes to her. They say yes to the system. They say yes to their jobs, to their country, to their flag, to dying, to everyone. Like, yes, 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 right? But to themselves, they'll never once do that. And then when they're left on their own after they take the red pill and if they unplug, they don't have that muscle exercised towards themselves, like, internally. Again, what are my ethics? Who am I? Not who am I in relation to women, not who am I in relation to my job, my flag, my children, nothing external from you. Sure, you can have affection and care for people and stuff, but I just find that lack of kind of rational selfishness in you when you can honestly observe that the rest of the world is quite functionally selfish in their own right, and you don't give yourself permission to sort of be a little bit selfish for you and say, hang on, no, I exist, I don't want to do this, go and watch your own fucking movie, I'm not watching that shit.
It's amazing how difficult it can be to get that one very basic, simple idea. Even using the movie is the perfect analogy. No, I don't want to watch some stupid ass chick flick. I want to watch something else. I'm going to go watching something else. You go to the other TV, watch what you want to watch, and men are just so challenged about it. It's very difficult for them. I think we've sort of acknowledged here, looking at the obstacles for so-called normal men, going up that hierarchy, moving ahead towards self-actualization. And I think that the red pill, at least for me, was the turning point in getting me in the right direction. It was what started motivating and pushing me forward towards self-actualization. But now I'm going to throw a wrench in the gears here and point out that there is, and I don't even want to guess at the percentage, it's small. But when I look at people who write me, who interact in the comments and stuff like that over the years, there is a percentage of men who I don't think the red pill has been very good to. They are stuck in red pill rage. And I get that. They get there honestly. I don't criticize anybody for being angry about this stuff when you recognize the hypocrisies and all the stuff you put up with and the way you were treated. When you finally get that, you sort of zone down into very clear vision. Being angry is a natural part of the reaction to that. But I see some guys that are, here I'm red pill, fuck women, they're all bitches, they're all cunts, they're all whores. And then see them 6 months later in the other comments on another video, and it's the same dialogue over and over again. It's almost like going nowhere. So I'm just curious about your thoughts about that. For some guys, the red pill may not be their friend. And I don't just mean guys that can't digest it, but who see the truth and are slaughtered by it in their souls.
Well, yeah, I mean, when I'm trying to place myself in the shoes of some of these guys, and they've come from either feeling numb at best in a previous relationship, job, or life, and now they're free, they're out of Shawshank, and they feel alive with like-minded men, and your world's turned into color, where once it was in black and white. And it's very tempting to sort of stay in there. And, but if you look at the space, that kind of safe space of guys that kind of understand you, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's essential to be able to vent there and, air your grievances for once without being shut down. Because the rest of the world outside, from women to courts to the media to social conversation, just everything is gynocentric. You have to kind of zip your mouth, right? You have to whisper to your male friend over a beer in the corner of a pub. That's about the only way.
I want to be clear about something here, and what I'm saying is that I really believe the worst thing that these guys could do is shut up.
Mm.
Yeah, for a reason.
I said it in my last video that I don't have anger or animosity towards them. I just wish them, for their own sake, to kind of make their lives better. Because if you stay in the kind of group, say I'm talking about MGTOW, and MGTOW tends to be the community I feel most simpatico with, but it's how I see things. Like MGTOW to me is a large library of honesty for men that they can kind of go in there and grab a book off the shelf. There's like heaps of useful information, from brief false law to hypergamy to male mother need to individual men's videos, Barbarossa, Stardust, Spetsnaz, like man-woman myth. Just the list goes on and on. They're books you pull off the shelf and you read them and you put them back, and it's a very silent kind of introspective thing to me anyway. Whereas a lot of guys think MGTOW is a club. I see it as a library. And you borrow these books and you learn from them and you implement them in your life, or this one doesn't work, or I'm not ready. I couldn't make my way through Dostoevsky when I was 12, and it took me, or not even in my 20s, but it took me later on to sort of be able to appreciate it. But it's a library full of very different sort of bits of information, and that's what it is to me. Sorry, I veered off course there. What was the question?
Well, I'm talking about men who take red pills, and it appears their major benefit, one, is protection and safety, which I think, interestingly, I mean, they're rejecting marriage and that model, and I think that's great. But I also have to point out that we're still talking about activities that are on those bottom rungs of Maslow's ladder. It's not moving forward with anything. It's just another obstacle for some guys to moving up those rungs and onto something better, or at least that appears that way from the outside to me. And of course, you never know what's really going on in somebody's head. But what I've seen more than a few times is guys that have taken red pills and they have gotten their duly earned red pill rage, and it seems to be going in perpetuity.
Yeah.
And I don't think that those guys are any more benefited by that than blue pill guys are benefited by blue pills.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to mention. That's the danger of seeing, say, in my experience, what I've been involved in the community in MGTOW, men that see it as a group. And I always push back on that. To me, it's an individual thing. And that's the only way you can sort of get self-respect and sort of self-actualize. But these guys that come out of the rage and they need to vent, and it's cathartic, it's important, and in some ways I'd say it's essential for a vast majority of guys to kind of get that out, because previously it was just, you can't say anything lest I lose my family and everything that I live for. But then these guys, when you get stuck in the group mentality, it's like going out and hanging with your favorite guys at your football club. You go out and have fun, but you can't play football and kick the ball with the guys 24/7. You go out there and you connect with men and sort of you release a little bit. But the point is, you can't live there in perpetuity. You need to sort of take what comes out there, take what made you feel alive, what you realized, and bring it into other aspects of your life, if not every aspect of your life. 24/7, be as open as you are with the guys, non-apologetic, simply because you deserve to exist. Don't be an arsehole, but there's no point beating your chest and being an alpha male and doing all this kind of stuff, which I see as men putting on lion suits rather than actually believing they're lions. And that's where they kind of, when they look in the mirror and they're alone at night and still feeling anxious and lost, you can't deny when you're not where you think you want to be, and you need to keep running. That I think once you sort of cut the umbilical cord to a lot of this shit, you start running less. Your heart rate goes down. You just accept a lot of stuff. I mean, just look at some of the definitions for the top of self-actualization, which is lack of prejudice, acceptance of facts, creativity, problem solving, and a desire to be the best you can be. They're all things at the top around self-actualization. And the kind of guys I tend to talk with almost solely, as you and I are talking here, are people who are interested in all of that. They don't really have much to do with the fight club aspect of MGTOW, where it's about forming teams and being strong with this defensive suit of armor. It's about sort of getting that armor off and feeling like you've got the skin of an elephant and the size of an elephant, and you're just calmly confident, and you realize what's what.
I like that analogy, and I think it also really goes back to the idea of internal validation. I don't recall ever seeing a man who operated fully on internal validation that was obsessively angry all the time.
Well, there's the saying, you can't be angry and curious at the same time. And that's absolutely true. So these defensive guys that are like, no, stuck in the lower end of the pyramid, you can't be defensive and saying no if you're curious and open and wanting to kind of grow. So it's impossible to be curious and angry at the same time. One stops the other.
Makes sense to me. Why don't we finish this out with a little talk, not so much on the textbook definition, but what are your ideas of the markers of self-actualization in men? I mean, we talked about men like Tesla and Edison who changed the world and did great things. And of course, you don't have to do that to self-actualize. So what are some of the things that you think that the common average guy can end up doing to have that kind of life and that kind of balance?
I don't think you can kind of falsely manufacture it. Again, like the red pill, it's not for everyone, and not everyone, I like to say, has that will. You know, you have to have a will to want to do it. Not to want to do it, to do it. You can want to do a lot of things in life, but a lot of people are just intellectually and physically lazy. It's better off knowing who you are in that respect. You know, if you're lazy in certain respects, accept it. But the markers, I think, are just someone with a really strong will where everything else comes in second place. And with that, if they want to achieve anything, they recognize that what they want comes at the forefront. I made a video a long time ago that I don't think a lot of people understood. It was called Constructive Solipsism, where not literally being solipsistic, but functionally putting yourself first all the time. And again, it's in terms of internal and external validation, where if you really believe, put it this way, most guys who are externally validated, this is a concept they can't get around. They think that this is reality and they're just placed in it. As a victim, as a slave, what can you do? That's the way she is. That's the way the job is, right? Whereas I don't think I'm placed in reality necessarily. I think I generate my own reality. So aside from the laws of nature, for me, everything's about will and everything's negotiable. But that's a very different way of thinking. And I don't think I can make anyone think like me. So either you do have that individual, selfish, solipsistic sort of healthy attitude where I always operate under the golden rule, where I treat people the way I want to be treated, never unfairly. I'll never take advantage of somebody. I won't lie to get what I want, but I always come first. And a lot of people don't like it, especially with guys, because they find honor in being sacrificial. And women love guys also being sacrificial. So,
you almost sound like you have a values-centered life.
Yeah, it's funny. I think the more individual people do that, there's no need for the groups. The groups take care of themselves by enough value-centered individuals being selfish enough.
Makes perfect sense to me. As a matter of fact, I've got a few videos on this very subject. I'll slap a couple of links below to those who want to check them out about that. Listen, this has been an awesome discussion. I've really enjoyed it. You have a Patreon account, I take it. You're at patreon.com/
human underscore on Patreon. It's the links are on the about section of my YouTube page anyway.
Well, they won't need to remember it because I'll stick a link below to your Patreon. As I always do with people that I think are out here giving opportunities and information that most of us men are not going to get anywhere else. I please encourage you to support his work and encourage him to continue doing this. A little bit of change in the tip jar helps with that. Trust me, I know. My Patreon's also below. But is there anything I haven't asked you or that you would like to add before we close up shop on this?
Just finally, just a few kind of helpful hints to guys that I mentioned in my Maslow's anchor video, how little things they can kind of do. There's a few things, but the first thing where guys absolutely have no direction is start journaling and writing down your thoughts. Right at the red pill rage, let it all out. And one good thing it does is you actually see how you word things and how you think of yourself. Like, a lot of guys will hate themselves on the page, and when you read it back, you might actually be surprised how little you think of yourself. And actually seeing the language may change a few tumblers in your head. The biggest, this was over a decade ago when I kind of sort of leaned over to this other side slowly, was my hardest hurdle was letting go of control, because I prided myself, on, my intellectual curiosity, my strength in all regards. The biggest thing you find out is once you let go of control, you actually have it. And writing down stuff on paper goes a long way in doing that.
That is a, what's the word I'm looking for? A seeming contradiction that makes all the sense in the world when you experience it. I will say this for what it's worth. I have been steered wrong by my gynocentrism. I've been steered wrong by my emotions. I have never been steered wrong by my values. Never once in my life. Never. And I say that with a capital N. Never.
And that's the thing about a lot of us guys like you, I, and a lot of guys I respect online creating content, whether it's MGTOW or otherwise. Their gynocentrism keeps telling us to shut up, but they're never telling us we're wrong. And that's something to think about.
And with that, I'm going to wish everybody a good evening. Once again, thank you very much, huMAN, for this discussion. I hope we get to do it again sometime, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Paul. Bye.